In the delivery room, filled with the sharp scent of antiseptic and the rapid beeping of a heart monitor, I was nearly exhausted after 20 hours of labor. Amid the searing pain tearing through my body, Eric, my husband, walked up with the birth certificate in hand and coldly declared, "Our child will not take your last name." A wave of despair surged through me. I tried to protest, but he just scoffed and said I had no say in the matter. I was overwhelmed by a feeling of helplessness and being stripped of my rights as a mother. At that moment, the nurse glanced at me and whispered, "Do you want me to tell him the truth?" I couldn't tell if my heart was pounding out of fear or something else. All I knew was that everything was about to change. I'm Helena, a 36-year-old woman who dedicated 5 years of her life to building a home with Eric, the man I once believed was a spring breeze sweeping across the barren fields of my soul, a precious gem filling the deepest voids inside me. We stumbled into each other in a tiny cafe in Seattle, where I, a mediocre manager, was struggling to get by day after day, and he, a regular customer, carried a smile as warm as morning sun and told witty stories about his job as a software engineer. I fell for his gentleness, for the way he brought light into my world on days I felt like a silent shadow drifting through life. But once we crossed the threshold of marriage, that light slowly faded, not because he changed, but because of his family, who never once embraced me, especially his mother, Amelia. I'm not someone who lives in fanciful dreams. I've learned that life isn't always kind, that trying your hardest doesn't guarantee others will open their hearts to you. Still, when I entered marriage, I carried a small hope that they might offer me a sliver of genuine affection. But I was mistaken. Amelia, his mother, was the one who held the reins of the entire family, a slender woman with neatly tied silver hair and eyes as sharp as blades. She didn't need to say much to send a chill down your spine. She lived in a grand house outside Portland, where everything was pristine, from the gleaming leather chairs in the living room to every perfectly placed jar of dried flowers on the tables. She often reminisced about the past, about when Eric was a child, about how their family was a closed circle that allowed no outsiders, like me. Amelia never outright said she didn't like me, but she had her ways of making me feel like I was nothing in her eyes. I remember the first time I met her, right after we got engaged. I picked out my nicest dress, a simple beige one that Eric liked, and brought a box of cookies I had baked myself, hoping she'd appreciate the gesture. She looked me over from head to toe, curled her lips into a faint smile, and said, "Oh, you really baked these?" I thought no one had time for such things anymore. Eric laughed, thinking it was a joke, but I caught the chill in her gaze, an expression of disdain barely concealed by her polite demeanor. That box of cookies was pushed to the corner of the kitchen, untouched, and from that moment on, I knew I would always be an outsider in her eyes. It wasn't just subtle remarks. When we got engaged, Amelia was upset that Eric had chosen the ring himself instead of letting her decide. "Eric, you should have asked me," she said sweetly, but with reproach, right in front of me. Eric shrugged. "I like this one," but his eyes seemed apologetic toward her. When we bought a small house in the Seattle suburbs that I adored, Amelia scoffed. "Too small. It doesn't suit our family. This gray wall color looks so dreary." I replied, "I like it. It feels cozy." She merely said, "Mum," then turned to Eric. "You should pick another place." He nodded without protest, making me feel like the house was never truly mine. She often showed up unannounced, bringing homemade food, acting like she owned the place. One time, I came home exhausted and found her cooking soup in our kitchen. "Helena, you're home so late. I had to make something for Eric," she said. I replied, "I was planning to cook." But she smiled faintly. "Eric prefers my dishes." Eric hugged her and said, "You're the best, Mom." I stood there, holding a bag of groceries, feeling like a guest in my own home. When I complained, he patted me on the shoulder. "That's just how Mom is. Don't let it get to you." But I knew she wanted control. She wanted me gone, so she could remain the most important person in his life. Eric was the only support I had, but he never defended me. I told him how it hurt to be constantly belittled by his mother, about the nights I cried silently because of her words. He laughed. "You're too sensitive. She doesn't mean anything by it." I wanted to scream that it wasn't just in my head, but I stayed quiet because I loved him, because I was afraid to lose him. I kept telling myself I could endure it, but each time he let her overpower me, failed to stand up for me, that love withered a little more. 5 years had quietly passed since our wedding, and I had poured my heart into trying to blend into their world. I showed up at every family gathering, hands full of small, carefully chosen gifts, forcing a smile just to squeeze myself into their conversations. But every time, I was met with lukewarm smiles, vague replies, and a chill that seeped into my bones as I realized I didn't belong. I still remember Eric's birthday party vividly. Amelia stood up, raised her glass, and declared proudly, "I'm so proud of you, Eric. You're my whole world." Her gaze swept past me as if I were an invisible ghost, while the rest of the family erupted in applause. I sat there, clutching my glass so tightly my knuckles turned white, swallowing down the bitter feeling of being excluded, like a stranger in the very play of my life. I slowly came to realize that I wasn't just a stranger in their eyes. I had become one in Eric's, too. He never shielded me, never once told his mother she had crossed a line, never included me in decisions where I so desperately wanted a voice. He left me alone in the moments I needed him the most, and each time, a crack formed in my heart, small fissures that ached deeply. I tried to fit in. I wore more elegant clothes, spoke less, smiled more, but their eyes remained cold, unchanged. When I became pregnant, I thought everything would change, that the baby would be a bridge between me and them. But I was naive. Amelia and Eric only pushed me further away, making me feel not just rejected from his family, but cast out from the very marriage I had once believed in. When I got pregnant, things didn't just get tense. They turned into a battleground I hadn't prepared myself for. I had thought this child would be a light, a chance for me to connect with Eric's family, for Amelia to finally see me as one of them. But instead, she turned my pregnancy into a power struggle, where I had no say at all. From the moment I shared the news, Amelia swept in like a storm, armed with a list of demands and opinions I never asked for. I remember that evening in our little Seattle kitchen, when Eric and I were having dinner. I hesitantly said, "Eric, I'm pregnant." His face lit up, and he hugged me so tightly, I thought everything would be okay. But then, he grabbed his phone and called Amelia immediately. "Mom, Helena's pregnant. You're going to be a grandma." I could hear her shrieking through the speaker, not out of joy for me, but sheer excitement for herself. Finally, I have to start preparing right away. From that moment, Amelia took over everything. She showed up at our home the very next morning, carrying a bag full of pregnancy books and a long list of things I had to do. "Helena, you can't eat that," she said, pointing at the bowl of pho I was cooking, my favorite comfort food since childhood. "These Asian dishes aren't good for the baby." I followed this exact diet when I was pregnant with Eric, and you have to follow it too. I tried to stay calm. "Thank you, but my doctor said I can eat normally." She raised an eyebrow, smirked, and replied, "A doctor?" I raised Eric into who he is without needing a doctor to tell me what to eat. Eric stood there, nodding. "Mom's right. Just give it a try." I swallowed my frustration, feeling like even my food preferences had been stripped away from me. But it didn't stop there. Amelia started meddling in every little decision. She hated the name I chose for our baby, Clara, a name I'd loved since childhood because it reminded me of my grandmother. When I told Eric, "I want to name her Clara," he nodded. "That sounds lovely." But the next day, Amelia arrived and announced, "Clara? Absolutely not. That name doesn't suit our family. I want my granddaughter to be named Margaret after my mother." I objected. "But this is our child, Eric and mine." I want to say. She looked at me, her eyes ice cold. "You're just the one carrying her, Helena. Eric will decide." Eric chimed in gently, but without taking my side. "Mom, Helena, and I will talk about it." But I knew he wouldn't fight. He never did. She even tried to choose my OBGYN. One day, she brought a business card and laid it in front of me. This was my doctor back then, the best in Portland. "You should switch," I replied. "I'm happy with my current doctor. She's very dedicated." Amelia sighed and turned to Eric. "She's so stubborn, Eric. You need to make her listen." Eric shrugged. "Helena, Mom just wants what's best." I felt like a child being scolded, not a mother preparing to welcome her child. The following months became a long stretch of cruel remarks. Once, when I was 6 months pregnant and visibly showing, Amelia scanned me from head to toe at a family party and said, "Let's hope she takes after Eric's side. Your nose is too low, not right for a girl." Eric was standing right there, chuckling as if it were a joke, while I bit my lip, clutching my dress so I wouldn't cry. Eric never pushed back. He let his mother steamroll me, and at times, even agreed with her. Once I asked him, "Eric, don't you think your mother's going too far? I want us to make decisions for our child together." He sighed. "She's just excited. Don't make a big deal out of it." But it wasn't excitement, it was control. And he let her do it because he was her golden boy. I started feeling invisible, as if I were just a vessel meant to produce a child for their perfect bloodline. Every night, I lay in bed with my hand on my belly, whispering to my baby, "I won't let them take you from me." But deep down, I feared I wasn't strong enough to stop them. The day of the birth came, and everything turned into a nightmare I could never have imagined. I entered the delivery room with a fragile hope that Eric would be by my side, that he would support me through the pain. But those 20 hours of labor were a solitary battle. Pain tore through my body. Every contraction felt like it was breaking my spine. Sweat poured down my face, and I screamed in desperation. Eric was physically there, but not truly present. He scrolled through his phone, wore earbuds, occasionally glancing at me like I was just another chore to get done. "I'm going to call Mom real quick," he said, walking out just as I hit the peak of agony. I could faintly hear Amelia's voice over the speaker. "Is she doing okay? Don't let her mess everything up." He came back holding a coffee, shrugged, and said, "Mom says you're almost done. Hang in there." I wanted to scream at him that I didn't need her encouragement. I needed him. Finally, after 20 hours of hell, my daughter was born. Her first cry cut through the pain, and I reached out weakly. "Let me hold her." But before the nurse could hand me the baby, Eric snatched the birth certificate from the tray, his eyes cold. He looked at me with no emotion and said, "Our daughter won't have your last name." I froze, my voice hoarse from exhaustion. "Eric, we agreed. She'd have both our names." He scoffed, his tone sharp as a blade. "What you want doesn't matter. Mom wants her to carry our family's name only," and I agreed. It felt like I had been stabbed in the heart. My blood froze in my veins. I had just endured 20 hours of excruciating labor, and yet he stood there stripping me of my rights as a mother like I was nothing. I tried to protest, my voice weak, but filled with fury. "No, Eric, you can't do this." He tilted his head, smirking. "Helena, you just gave birth. Don't get dramatic. It's already decided." I felt like a trapped animal, cornered, betrayed by the person I loved most. My daughter lay there, tiny and innocent, while I lay helpless, unable to protect her from the will of her father and grandmother. But then, in the middle of my despair, the nurse, an older woman with sharp eyes, approached me. She glanced at Eric, then leaned down and whispered into my ear, "Do you want me to tell him the truth?" My heart pounded, not from the physical pain, but from a deep intuition that whatever she was about to say would change everything. I looked at her, breathing heavily. "What truth?" She shook her head slightly. "Not here. But trust me, you need to know." Eric was still standing there, smug with the birth certificate in hand, completely unaware that his world was about to shatter. In that moment, as Eric stood with the birth certificate and that arrogant smile on his face, I felt something inside me crack wide open. The delivery room, with its thick antiseptic smell and constant beeping of machines, suddenly felt more suffocating than ever. I lay there, my body wrecked from 20 hours of labor, sweat clinging to my forehead, hands trembling from pain and exhaustion. My daughter, so small and fragile, lay in the bassinet just a few steps away. But I hadn't even touched her before Eric declared his cruel decision. "Our daughter won't have your last name." His words sliced through my dignity like a knife, and when I weakly but furiously objected, "Eric, you can't do this," he simply sneered. "Helena, you don't have a say here. This is what my mother wants," and I agreed. I looked at him, eyes red with both exhaustion and rage, but he didn't flinch. He turned away, continuing to fill out the paperwork as if I didn't exist. I felt a cold emptiness spreading through my chest, not just the physical pain, but the hollowness of someone who had just realized that everything she believed in was a lie. 6 years with Eric, I had sacrificed so much, my time, my dreams, even my pride. And now, in the very moment I became a mother, he stripped away the most sacred part of it. I wanted to scream, to lunge, and snatch the paper from his hands, but my body had no strength left. All I could do was lie there, tears silently streaming down my cheeks and soaking the hospital pillow, wondering where I had gone wrong to end up like this. But then, the nurse's whisper cut through the chaos in my mind. Do you want me to tell him the truth? I turned my head slowly through the pain and met her sharp eyes. There was something in her gaze, not pity, but certainty, that made my heart pound. What truth? I whispered, my voice hoarse. She glanced quickly at Eric, then leaned in again. Not here. But you need to know, and he needs to face it. Eric was still there, completely unaware, scribbling down our daughter's name, the name he and Amelia had chosen without even asking me. Margaret Amelia Thompson, he murmured, as if proud of himself. I looked at him and felt like I was staring at a stranger, not the man I once loved, not the man I had shared dreams of a happy family with. Eric, I said, my voice trembling but firm, stop it. He turned, frowning. What now, Helena? You just gave birth. Don't make a scene. I gritted my teeth. She's our daughter, yours and mine. I have the right to help choose her name. He let out a dry laugh, full of mockery. Right? What rights do you think you have here? My mother chose this name long ago, and I think it's perfect. I felt the blood rush to my face, rage rising like a flame. Your mother didn't give birth to her, Eric. I just went through 20 hours of hell to bring her into this world. He shrugged, as if my words had no weight. Helena, you're tired. Just rest. I've got this. But I couldn't rest. I wouldn't. I turned to the nurse, eyes pleading. What did you say about the truth? Tell me now. Eric cut in, his voice sharp. Whatever she said, ignore her. I'm your husband. I make the decisions. But the nurse didn't let him drown me out. She stepped forward, her voice low but firm. She asked me, and I'm going to answer. Then she leaned closer to me, her tone dropping. Check the insurance records. He did something with the paperwork, and you need to know now. Eric froze, his hand stilled mid-signature. But he quickly tried to recover his composure. What nonsense are you talking about? Helena, don't listen to her. I looked at him, my heart racing, not from fear, but from the gut-deep certainty that the nurse was telling the truth. Eric, I said slowly, voice tightening, what insurance records? What did you do? He gave a strained laugh, but I saw the sweat rolling down his forehead. It's nothing, really. You're just tired. You're imagining things. But I didn't believe him, not anymore. I turned to the nurse. I want to see the records. Please. She nodded, her expression grave. I'll go get them. But prepare yourself. It's not going to be pretty. Eric shot up, his voice rising. You have no right. This is a family matter. The nurse glanced at him coldly. I've worked here 30 years. I know my rights. And she pointed to me, has every right to know the truth. She left the room, leaving Eric and me in a heavy silence. He turned toward me, trying to sound calm. Helena, please. Don't blow this out of proportion. I just want what's best for our daughter. But I interrupted. What's best for her, or for your mother? What did you do behind my back, Eric? He didn't answer, only looked at me with a mix of anger and confusion. My stomach twisted, not from postpartum pain, but from the sinking feeling that I'd been betrayed even deeper than I had realized. When the nurse returned, holding a thin file, she placed it gently on my lap and opened it. I looked down, and time seemed to stop. My name wasn't on my daughter's insurance records. Eric was listed as the sole legal guardian, and I, the child's biological mother, had been erased completely. I looked up at him, tears spilling uncontrollably. Eric, what the hell did you do? His face went pale, voice stammering. Helena, I just wanted everything to be clear. I screamed, not caring about the pain ripping through my body. Clear. You erased me from our daughter's paperwork. Are you trying to steal her from me? He raised his hand, as if to calm me. No, it's not like that. Mom said. I cut him off. Your mother? Amelia? She told you to do this? He stayed silent, and that silence said everything. The nurse stood beside me, her voice like steel. I've seen this before. Men who change documents, remove their wise names, then disappear with the baby before anyone realizes. You're lucky I noticed. I held my head, trying to breathe through the panic. Why, Eric? I whispered. Why would you do this to me? He turned away, unable to look at me. Mom said you weren't capable of raising the baby, that I needed to take control to protect her. I let out a bitter laugh, my voice breaking. Protect her? You're protecting her from me, her mother? He didn't answer, just stood there, hands trembling. I looked at my daughter, so small and innocent, and felt a surge of fury I couldn't contain. I turned to the nurse. Can I have it corrected? She nodded. Yes, and I'll help you. But you need to act quickly. Eric cut in, his voice urgent. Helena, don't do this. We can talk. But I interrupted him, eyes sharp as ice. Talk? You betrayed me, Eric. You and your mother plotted behind my back from the beginning. Don't expect forgiveness. He stepped forward, trying to grab my hand, but I pulled away. Don't touch me. The nurse placed her hand on my shoulder, her voice calm and steady. Do you want someone to help? Family or a lawyer? I thought of my sister, Sarah, the one who always warned me about Eric and Amelia. My sister, I said, voice shaking. Call her. Please, Eric shouted. Helena, you can't do this. I'm the baby's father. I looked at him, my voice calm but deadly. And I'm her mother. But you may not stay her father if I can help it. The nurse left to call Sarah, and I sat there, cradling my daughter for the first time, feeling her tiny warmth seep through the blanket. Eric stood frozen, pale as a ghost, realizing he had lost control. I was no longer the weak, compliant Helena. I was a mother ready to fight. And the truth that had just come to light was only the beginning of the storm to come. He and Amelia had underestimated me, but they would soon find out just how costly that mistake would be. The delivery room was no longer a place where I felt powerless. It had become the battlefield where I intended to win. I held my daughter in my arms, her tiny warmth grounding me, and for the first time in 20 hours of agony, I felt a sliver of peace amid the storm. Eric stood a few steps away, pale-faced, his eyes darting between anger and confusion. The truth had exposed him, the forged insurance forms, the plot to erase me as a mother, and now the smugness he wore while holding the birth certificate was gone. The nurse, eyes sharp as steel, stood beside me like an unexpected ally, holding the phone she'd just used to call my sister. She's on her way, she said firmly. You're not alone. Eric stepped forward, his voice shaky but trying to stay in control. Helena, please listen. We can still fix this. You just gave birth. You're not thinking clearly. I lifted my gaze, piercing through him. Not thinking clearly? Eric, you removed my name from our baby's documents. You tried to take her from me, and you say I'm not thinking clearly? He raised a hand, trying to calm me. No, I wasn't trying to take her. Mom just wanted. I cut him off, voice sharp as a blade. Your mother. Amelia again. Did she tell you to erase me from my daughter's life so she could control everything? He fell silent, his lips pressed tight, and that silence was the clearest confession of all. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm for the baby in my arms. Explain, Eric. Why did you do it? He ran a hand through his hair, sweat sliding down his forehead. Mom said you weren't strong enough to raise a child, that you'd mess it all up. I just wanted to protect her. I let out a bitter laugh, my voice cracking. Protect her? By betraying her mother? How long have you and your mom been plotting this behind my back? He turned away again, unable to meet my gaze. Mom said if I let you make decisions, everything would fall apart. I was just following her lead. I gritted my teeth. Just following? You're my husband, Eric, not your mother's puppet. The door burst open, and Sarah stepped in, her face red with rage. She looked at me, then at Eric, immediately grasping what was happening. Helena, are you okay? Where's the baby? She asked urgently. I nodded and pointed to the little one in my arms. Here. But Eric, before I could finish, Sarah rounded on him. What the hell did you do to my sister? Eric flinched, stammering, "Sarah, this doesn't concern you." Sarah marched toward him, pointing a finger in his face. "Doesn't concern me? You erased my sister's name from her own child's documents, and you think this doesn't concern me?" The nurse stepped in, her voice firm. "I just showed her the records." He listed himself as the only legal guardian. Sarah turned to me, eyes wide. "He actually did it?" I nodded, tears spilling again. "Yes. He and Amelia planned to take my baby from me." Sarah gripped my hand, her voice unwavering. "He's not taking anything. I'm here now, and I won't let this continue." Eric shouted, "Sarah, you have no right to interfere. This is my family." But Sarah sneered. "Family? You betrayed my sister. You have no family here anymore." I looked at my sister, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I'd found my footing again. I turned to Eric, my voice calm but deadly. "Eric, you're done. I won't forgive you, and I won't let you or your mother come near this baby." He stepped forward, trying to take my hand. "Helena, don't do this. I'm her father. We can." I yanked my hand away and shouted, "Don't touch me. You lost the right to be her father the moment you chose your mother over your wife and child." He stepped back, face pale. "You can't do this. I have rights." I cut him off. "Rights? You think the law will side with you after I show them this?" I held up the insurance file, my voice shaking with rage. "You forged documents, Eric. I'm taking you to court, and I will win." The nurse nodded. "I'll be a witness." I recorded everything, from the moment he picked up the birth certificate to when I discovered the forged paperwork. Sarah chimed in, "And I'm calling a lawyer right now. I've got a friend in family court. They'll fast-track this." Eric stood frozen, hands trembling, realizing he'd already lost. But then his phone rang, and I saw the name Mom flash across the screen. He glanced at me, hesitated, then answered. Amelia's voice boomed through the speaker. "Eric, is the baby born yet? Is the name Margaret finalized?" He stammered. "Mom things." Things got complicated. I snatched the phone from his hand and shouted, "Amelia, listen to me. You don't have a granddaughter named Margaret. I'm keeping this baby, and neither you nor Eric will ever lay a hand on her." Amelia screamed back, "Helena, how dare you speak to me like that? Eric, deal with that girl now." But Eric just stood there, speechless. I threw the phone onto the bed and turned to him. "Did you hear her? That's the last time she ever controls you." He looked at me, voice small. "Helena, I didn't mean." I cut him off. "Too late. I'm done with you." Sarah took my hand. "You're coming home with me and the baby tonight. You don't have to stay here another second." I nodded, holding my daughter tighter, feeling as though a massive weight had just been lifted off my shoulders. 2 weeks later, I filed for divorce. With Sarah and our lawyer's help, I had the records corrected and established myself as Clara's sole legal guardian, the name I had chosen from the beginning. Eric didn't fight it. He couldn't. Not with forged documents and the nurse's sworn statements. Amelia called me dozens of times, threatening, begging, but I blocked her number. Eric tried to see me once, showing up at Sarah's doorstep, his eyes red and swollen. "Helena, I was wrong. Please give me a chance." I cut him off, my voice ice cold. "You had 5 years, Eric. It's over." I shut the door and didn't look back. 3 months later, Clara and I moved into a small apartment near the river in Tacoma. I hung watercolor paintings I made during sleepless nights, planted herbs and flowers on the balcony, and every evening I sat by Clara's crib, singing lullabies in a raspy but loving voice. Amelia lost everything. Her son walked away, no longer under her control, and I heard she sold her grand house in Portland because she could no longer afford to keep it. Eric lived alone, no Amelia, no me, no child. But I didn't feel vindicated. I felt free. I had fought and won. Not with revenge, but by reclaiming my life. One morning, I received a letter from the nurse. Her name was Mary, the woman who saved me that day. In her letter, she wrote, "Helena, I've seen so many women lose battles like yours, but you're the strongest I've ever met. Hold that little girl close." I smiled, set the letter down, and looked at Clara sleeping in her crib. "We did it, baby," I whispered. "From the ashes of that marriage. I didn't just survive, I was reborn, stronger than I had ever been. And no one, not Eric, not Amelia, could ever take that away from me again."